We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be. Have you ever questioned if your current struggles and setbacks are all that life has to offer? Is there a part of you that longs for something more, yet doubts whether you're worthy or capable of receiving it? These moments of uncertainty, of feeling trapped by circumstances or weighed down by past failures, are often when we feel the farthest from the future we hope for. You might be wondering why your life hasn't transformed the way you dreamed it would, why success seems so elusive, or why, despite all your efforts, prosperity seems reserved for someone else. But here's the truth: God sees far beyond what you can perceive right now. You may feel overlooked, unseen, or forgotten, but God is at work in ways you cannot fathom. Just as Jeremiah 29 verse 11 tells us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This verse isn't just a promise, it's a reflection of God's deep and intimate understanding of the desires in your heart. He knows the pains you carry, the dreams that seem out of reach, and the quiet prayers you've whispered in the dark. And He is already crafting a path for you that is filled with hope and prosperity, even if it looks different than what you imagined. Think about this: what if the delays, the hardships, and the frustrations are not signs of failure, but of God's perfect timing? What if the transformation you seek is closer than you think, waiting for the right moment to unfold? The landscape of your life is about to change, and when it does, it will be undeniable. You may not be able to see the full picture yet, but just like a master artist, God is painting a masterpiece with every stroke, using every trial and triumph to shape your future. Don't give up hope, just because the pieces haven't fallen into place yet. Now, I want to ask you, what if your breakthrough is just around the corner? What if the prosperity you've been longing for, whether it's financial stability, personal fulfillment, or spiritual peace, is about to be delivered into your hands? Don't turn away from this message, because the transformation is coming. God's plans are always perfect, and He will provide everything you need, not just to survive, but to thrive in every aspect of your life. If this resonates with you, if you feel that God is speaking to your heart right now, stay with me. Don't let doubt or fear convince you that this message isn't for you. Keep listening, because what you are about to hear could be the key to unlocking the future you've been waiting for. You are on the edge of a divine shift, and now is the time to embrace it with faith. Before we move on to the next part of this powerful message, I want to hear from you. If this has touched your heart, like this video and leave a comment below. Share what you are believing God for, because when we speak our dreams aloud, we take the first step towards seeing them realized. There's so much more ahead, and I believe with all my heart that God has something extraordinary in store for you. Let's continue this journey together, trusting in the one who holds our future securely in His hands. Can I hear a hallelujah from you? C.S. Lewis once said, "We must lay before Him what is in us, not what ought to be in us." Have you ever felt like the dreams you've nurtured, the prayers you've whispered, and the faith you've held on to have gone unnoticed or unanswered? Do you ever wonder if the seeds of hope and trust you've planted will ever grow into the harvest you've longed for? These questions are a reflection of the inner struggles we often face, especially when life doesn't seem to align with the promises we've held so tightly. Much like a farmer who tills the soil and plants his seeds, trusting that in due time a harvest will come, we too must plant our seeds of faith, even when the results aren't immediately visible. But in those quiet moments of waiting, where doubt can creep in, have you asked yourself, am I worthy of the abundance God has promised? This feeling of unworthiness, of wondering whether God's blessings are truly for you, is a common struggle. Yet, it's in these moments of uncertainty that we must remember God's deeper promises. As Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us, His plans for us are always good, and they include more than material wealth. True prosperity is not just found in possessions or status, it is found in the peace that settles in your heart, the sense of purpose that drives your days, and the fulfillment that comes from walking in God's will. So how do we move from doubt to belief, from waiting to receiving? It starts with recognizing that God wants us to prosper in every area of our lives spiritually, emotionally, and yes, even materially. But before we can receive this abundance, we must first believe that we are worthy of it. Do you believe that God's plans for you include not just survival but thriving? Can you trust that even in the silence, even in the waiting, He is preparing something far greater than you can imagine? Just as a farmer waits for the right season to harvest his crops, we too must trust in God's perfect timing. His abundance is not limited by our doubts or delays. It's already set in motion, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. So, I encourage you to ask yourself, are you ready to receive the peace, purpose, and fulfillment that God has promised? Do you believe that you are capable of stepping into the abundance He has planned for you? Take this moment to reflect on the seeds you've planted, those acts of faith, those moments of trust. Know that God sees them all, and in His time He will bring about the harvest. If this message resonates with you, stay with me, because what comes next could be the key to unlocking the blessings God has stored up for you. Before we continue, I invite you to engage with this message by liking and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Let's journey together in faith, trusting that God's abundance is on the horizon. Imagine life as a story being intricately written, with each chapter unfolding in ways you don't always understand. Have you ever wondered why certain events seem so disconnected, like pages torn from a book? Perhaps you felt lost, like parts of your journey are scattered, and you can't see the overarching plot. But what if, as C.S. Lewis once posed, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains? What if those moments of confusion and uncertainty are the very times God is shouting, guiding you toward a bigger purpose, even when it's unclear? Lewis often wrote about the human experience as a journey toward something greater, and sometimes that journey feels fragmented. But in the same way that an author knows the end of the story long before the reader does, God holds the conclusion of your life. Each trial, each joy, each unknown is not a stray page, but part of a carefully designed narrative. Have you considered that what feels like a missing piece in your life is simply a chapter not yet written? When you face these incomplete moments, do you ask yourself where God's presence is? Could it be that He's waiting for the right moment to reveal how everything fits together, just as an author gradually builds to the climax of a novel? Like Lewis suggested, we must trust that God, in His wisdom, knows the plot even when we don't. When He finally delivers that missing piece, the revelation, the resolution, only then will we see the full picture. What if, at that moment, the fragmented pieces of your story transform into a masterpiece, more beautiful and intricate than you ever imagined? Have you ever found yourself doubting whether true abundance and prosperity are meant for you? Perhaps you've faced setbacks, or the road to your dreams feels like a never-ending uphill battle. But consider the farmer who, day after day, tends to his fields without hesitation. He doesn't stop to question whether the harvest will come. He trusts in the process, the rain, and the unseen work beneath the soil. C.S. Lewis once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." Isn't it true that our challenges might be preparing us for something far greater than we can imagine? What if the very thing you see as a delay or disappointment is part of God's intricate plan, building in you the resilience and trust needed to receive His blessings? God's timing is often a mystery to us, but His faithfulness is certain. Imagine if you stopped watering your dreams, stopped nurturing your faith, just because you couldn't see immediate results. Wouldn't that be like abandoning a field right before the harvest? Trust in God's plan and remember, as Lewis pointed out, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. The prosperity you seek is not only possible, it's already in motion. Just as the farmer prepares for the harvest, your role is to remain steadfast, trusting that God is aligning everything for your good, even when you can't see the full picture yet. The missing piece of your life's puzzle is on its way, and when it arrives, you'll see that every moment of waiting was worth it. Have you ever found yourself standing at the crossroads of uncertainty, feeling as though the life you were destined to live remains just beyond your grasp. Perhaps you've wrestled with the unsettling question, does God truly desire to bless my life, particularly when the present seems filled with financial strain and unmet expectations? C.S. Lewis once poignantly remarked, "We are far too easily pleased." This insight compels us to ask ourselves, could it be that our doubts and hesitations arise from an assumption that what we currently possess is the best we will ever receive? But consider for a moment, what if the limitation lies not in our circumstances but in our perspective? What if God, in His infinite wisdom, sees a future far grander than anything we could envision on our own? In times like these, it's easy to feel like we lack the necessary resources, the right connections, or even the strength to push forward. But is it possible that these very moments of struggle are designed to build within us a deeper faith? C.S. Lewis's words challenge us to look beyond the immediate, beyond the tangible barriers. When you feel as though you're on the edge of your destiny, what if the very things you perceive as roadblocks are actually stepping stones to the greater plans God has for you? Isn't it comforting to realize that God not only places dreams within us, but also orchestrates the means to fulfill them? Could it be that right now, even as we struggle to see how, God is meticulously aligning the circumstances, people, and finances we need to step into the fullness of our calling? What if the very delay you're experiencing is not a denial, but divine preparation? By expanding our hearts and minds, by trusting that God's timing and provision exceed our expectations, we open ourselves to receive not just the dreams we hold, but the greater reality that He's preparing, one beyond our wildest imaginations. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis challenges us to shift our perspective on life's disruptions, suggesting that what we often view as interruptions are, in fact, integral parts of our real lives. Could it be that the delays, the waiting, the moments when our plans seem to stall, are actually part of a divine orchestration? Lewis urges us to look beyond our immediate desires, asking, are these interruptions thwarting our progress, or are they guiding us towards a better, unseen outcome? Consider your own situation. How often do we become frustrated when our goals, dreams, or financial opportunities feel out of reach? It's easy to feel forgotten in these seasons of waiting. Yet, God's timing, as Lewis reminds us, is never flawed. The opportunities we think are delayed might be arriving precisely when they are meant to. The resources you long for, whether it's wealth or connections, are not withheld as a punishment, but rather postponed until you are fully prepared to handle them. Ask yourself, are you truly ready to receive the blessings God has in store? The Bible speaks of the wealth of the unjust being transferred to the righteous, but the real issue is not about the transfer of wealth or resources. It's about your readiness for the transformation that God is preparing for you. Are you open to the changes that come with His blessing, or are you clinging to the comfort of the familiar? Fear has a way of whispering doubts into our hearts, doubts about our worthiness, our ability to manage blessings, and even God's faithfulness. But as Lewis suggests, trusting God's plan requires letting go of our desire to control every detail. Can you release your fear and trust that God's timing and provision are perfect, even if it means enduring a season of waiting? As Lewis so poignantly expressed, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So, lift your head, strengthen your faith, and get ready for the shift that's coming. God has placed greatness within you, and now He's moving the world to make sure you see it manifest. What do we do when the dreams we hold in our hearts seem insurmountable, towering over our abilities? Do we shrink back, wondering if the enormity of our vision reveals our own inadequacies? Or could it be that such dreams point not to our limitations, but to the vastness of God's power at work within us? C.S. Lewis, with his profound insight, once said, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." But what if these dreams, no matter how big or how new, are a direct invitation from God to rely on His strength rather than our own? When you stand at the crossroads of uncertainty, remember that the source of all strength, all wisdom, and all provision flows from God. He invites us into His endless abundance, where His supply surpasses anything we could ever muster through human effort. But ask yourself, have you made room for God to work in the midst of your striving? Have you laid down the burdens of self-reliance to let Him lead? As Lewis poignantly notes, faith is the art of holding on to things in spite of your changing moods and circumstances. We often hold back, thinking success depends entirely on our grit, forgetting that God's promise is not rooted in what we can do, but in what He has already prepared. Philippians 4 verse 19 assures us that He will meet all our needs, not according to our limited resources, but according to the immeasurable riches of His glory in Christ Jesus. So then, the real question is this: are you clinging to your own strength or trusting in the infinite wellspring of God's provision? Every morning, as Lewis suggests, is a fresh start and opportunity to renew your reliance on God. His mercies are new every morning, as Lamentations reminds us, and with each day comes another chance to place our dreams, hopes, and fears in His hands. When we begin with Him, aligning our hearts with His will, even the grandest dreams fall within reach. What once felt impossible is made possible by His unfailing grace. So, as you pursue your aspirations, take comfort in this: the size of your dream is not a limitation but an invitation for God to show His greatness in your life. Trust that He will meet your needs and go beyond your expectations, blessing you in ways you can't yet see. And remember, the journey is not about what you can do alone, but what God can do through you. Life often presents us with challenges that seem insurmountable, leaving us questioning whether our deepest dreams were ever truly within reach. Have you ever found yourself wondering if the roadblocks ahead are definitive, or could they be something more? C.S. Lewis offers us an important perspective, reminding us that hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. What if, rather than dead ends, these obstacles are stepping stones strategically placed by a God who sees far beyond what we can comprehend? Consider this: every trial, every hardship, might they be tools used to mold us, preparing us for a future that, right now, remains hidden from view. When you pause and reflect on your life, do you not notice the patterns of faithfulness that weave through your story? Each time you've chosen to trust, each sacrifice you've made in the name of a higher purpose, aren't these the very moments when your soul leaned closer to God? Lewis once said that we are what we believe we are, urging us to realize that our identity in God is built upon the beliefs we hold, even in moments of trial. Isn't it possible, then, that your prayers, whispered in the solitude of your heart, are not in vain? God, who sees the quiet acts of generosity and love, is not absent from your struggles. The heart that seeks Him above all else is one that draws His favor not through sheer effort, but through a sincere desire to know Him more deeply. So what if the blessings we long for are not delayed, but are being perfectly timed by a God who prepares us for a destiny far greater than we could imagine? The question now is, can you trust the process, even when the way is unclear? Imagine your life as a grand adventure, unfolding with each passing day. C.S. Lewis once said, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind." His words are a reminder that the best is yet to come. But how often do we find ourselves clinging to past failures or unrealized dreams, doubting the possibility of something better? Have you ever put aside your biggest aspirations, convinced they were unattainable, either because of past setbacks or your own perceived inadequacies? It's easy to limit ourselves, believing that our best days are behind us. But what if God is asking you to dream again, this time relying not on your strength but on His boundless power? Take a moment to reflect. What dreams have you shelved, thinking they were too big for you to accomplish? Perhaps, in God's eyes, they were never too big, only perfectly timed for when your heart was ready to trust fully in Him. Lewis often explored the tension between human limitations and divine potential. He understood that faith isn't about what we can do but about what God can do through us. Have you ever considered that God might be preparing something far beyond your imagination, waiting for you to surrender those dreams back to Him? In moments of doubt, it's natural to question whether our faith is enough or if our efforts have been recognized. Lewis, in his writings, often pointed out that our journey isn't measured by visible achievements, but by our willingness to continue walking, even when the outcome is uncertain. He challenges us to ask ourselves, do you truly believe that God can accomplish through you what you cannot achieve alone? When you walk in faith, trusting that His timing is perfect, the dreams that once seemed impossible can become realities beyond anything you envisioned. So, instead of asking whether your dreams are too big, perhaps the better question is, are you willing to trust in a God who has no limits? Let's pause for a moment and reflect on this feeling by drawing from C.S. Lewis's wisdom, which often reminds us of the depth of our spiritual journey. In his words, faith is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted, in spite of your changing moods. What does this mean for the turbulence you might be feeling now? Faith, like a garden, requires time, patience, and care before it can truly flourish. Each prayer, each act of love and sacrifice is like planting a seed, one that requires the right conditions that may only come in God's perfect timing. Lewis often spoke of an eternal reality, one that is not bound by the limitations of our earthly senses. Could it be that God's provision operates in this same unseen realm, working not on the tangible rewards we seek but on the grace we need? Now consider this: what if every act of kindness you've extended, every selfless moment of giving, has been deposited not into an account we can see, but into a spiritual storehouse far beyond our understanding? Could it be that the delays and frustrations you face are not signs of neglect but of preparation? As Lewis pointed out, faith isn't about holding on to belief when it's easy, but when it's hardest. What if God is preparing to unveil something far greater than you've asked for, something that exceeds your wildest dreams? His timing, which transcends our finite grasp, may not align with your expectations, but that doesn't make it less perfect. What if, instead of waiting in frustration, you saw this delay as a divine alignment of things beyond your control? What would change in your heart if you knew that every prayer, every tear, every moment of perseverance is leading toward a moment that God has already ordained? Perhaps, like Lewis suggested, it's about trusting in the unseen and the unknown, about holding on to faith when every other feeling fails. Imagine if what you're hoping for is closer than you think, but it's wrapped in the wisdom and timing of a God who never fails. Could you hold on just a little longer, knowing that His plan is far greater than what you see? Have you ever stood on the edge of your dreams, feeling as if the chasm between where you are and where you want to be is insurmountable? That deep ache of longing can stir feelings of inadequacy, making you question your ability to move forward. How often do we find ourselves trapped in that tension, desiring something so deeply, yet feeling paralyzed by our own limitations? In these moments, it's essential to recall the wisdom of C.S. Lewis, who once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." Isn't it remarkable how God takes what seems impossible and transforms it into a canvas for His extraordinary plans? Our faith, then, isn't about mustering enough strength to conquer every challenge alone, but about trusting in God's boundless power to operate where our human effort falls short. When we look at our struggles through the lens of faith, something shifts. God, in His unfathomable wisdom, sees more than the obstacles in front of us. He sees the foundation being laid for something greater. Even when life's doors seem closed, how do we know that God isn't already preparing to open a window to opportunities we never imagined? C.S. Lewis beautifully reminds us, there are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind. This thought isn't just comforting, it's a call to trust in God's timing, to believe that He is shaping a future far more extraordinary than the present difficulties. Could it be that the very struggles we face are the stepping stones to the breakthrough God has already prepared for us? How often do we find ourselves waiting for blessings, convinced they are still distant, something that belongs to a future version of ourselves? Yet, what if the very struggles we face today are laying the groundwork for a future we haven't even imagined? C.S. Lewis wrote, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny," and this speaks directly to the truth that what we see as barriers might be God's unseen preparation for something greater. Have you considered that the obstacles in your path may be shaping you for blessings far beyond your current understanding? The Bible reminds us that those who squander their gifts or live only for self-centered gain will eventually lose what they have. Meanwhile, God's faithfulness pours out abundance on those who remain steadfast. But have you thought about what form that abundance might take? Perhaps it is not merely in financial provision or personal achievements, but in the lasting legacy you leave behind, one that shapes your family, your community, and future generations. C.S. Lewis also wisely said, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." What if your perseverance today, in the face of uncertainty and difficulty, is not just about surviving the present moment, but about building a future that exceeds your greatest hopes? God's blessings often come not in the ways we expect, but in ways we could never have imagined, far-reaching, eternal, and full of His divine purpose. Are you open to receiving blessings you didn't even know to ask for? What if, by trusting Him now, you're not just working for yourself, but for a future filled with His promise for you and those you hold dear? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're questioning whether your dreams will ever come true? Perhaps you're stuck in a job that feels stagnant, and every day it seems like the promotion you desire is further out of reach. Or maybe you've resigned yourself to believing that owning a home is an unattainable goal. It's in these moments of doubt that our faith is most tested. But have you ever asked yourself, where is your heart anchored in those times of uncertainty? Are you feeding your faith with trust, surrender, and patience, or is it wilting under the weight of disbelief? C.S. Lewis once said, "Faith is the art of holding on to things your reason has once accepted, in spite of your changing moods. When we face life's uncertainties, do we cling to this faith, trusting that God is working behind the scenes even when we can't see it? Or do we let our shifting emotions lead us into despair?" The truth is, God's timing rarely matches ours. Yet, if we are intentional in nurturing our trust in Him, we open ourselves to His incredible surprises. A job promotion that once seemed out of reach suddenly becomes possible, or an opportunity arises unexpected but perfectly timed. These moments often feel like miracles, but they are the result of faith that was quietly nurtured, much like a seed planted in the dark soil that eventually breaks through into the light. C.S. Lewis also wisely noted that hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. What if the delays and setbacks you're experiencing are not signs of failure, but rather the process of preparation for something greater? Imagine if, instead of viewing obstacles as roadblocks, you saw them as stepping stones designed to strengthen your faith. What if the very thing you're praying for is just on the other side of the doubt you've been holding on to? Can you dare to believe that God has already set in motion the events that will bring your breakthrough? Perhaps the real question isn't whether God will come through, but whether we're willing to trust Him fully, even when the path seems unclear. Have you allowed yourself to dream again, to hope that God might transform your circumstances when you least expect it? Or are you still letting your doubts hold you back from embracing the possibility that the impossible could become reality? The key is not in striving, but in trusting. Seek God daily, and let your faith prepare you for the transfer that is already on its way. What you thought would take 30 years might happen tomorrow, simply because you were ready to believe. Imagine for a moment, what if the most profound transformation in your life wasn't found in the accumulation of possessions or status, but in a redefinition of how you understand yourself, how others see you becoming through your trials? Perhaps you felt invisible, like your contributions are constantly ignored, or your worth is questioned by those around you. But what if the core issue isn't about how others perceive you? What if it's about how you measure your own value? C.S. Lewis reminds us that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. His words push us to look beyond the surface and ask, can you resist the urge to measure your significance by the approval or acknowledgement of others? Lewis once pondered the notion that our identity is shaped by the choices we make, not by the fleeting opinions of those around us. This raises the question, in moments when you feel unseen, how do you respond? Are you willing to continue your journey, even when others seem to disregard your contributions? Can you find worth within yourself, knowing that your endurance might be leading to a deeper growth? unseen yet invaluable? C.S. Lewis in The Great Divorce describes how our decisions either pull us closer to heaven or further from it. Each choice to persevere, to press forward despite rejection or being overlooked, shapes a character that reaches beyond this world. What if God's work in you during these silent moments of invisibility is far greater than you could ever imagine? He might be building within you a strength that goes unnoticed now, but is undeniable in its eternal significance. Are you willing to trust that the unseen work being done within you is far more important than any outward reward? Could it be that the greatest victories in life are the ones where no one else applauds? Have you ever wondered what it takes for others to see the strength in your journey, the quiet power in your perseverance? There will be a time when those who once overlooked you will be forced to reconsider. They will notice your quiet dedication, your steadfast resolve, and the unwavering faith that has guided you. You don't need to speak louder or strive for their approval of your actions. Consistency and integrity will speak for themselves. Have you prepared your heart for that moment when the world finally sees what you have known all along? It's not about seeking their validation, but rather about remaining true to your purpose. As C.S. Lewis observed, integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. Those who once ignored your voice will soon recognize the depth of your wisdom, not because you changed, but because you never wavered. But how does one stay anchored in such consistency? The answer lies in trust, specifically in trusting God as our shepherd. Psalm 23 verse 1-2 provides a beautiful reminder: the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures, he leads me beside quiet waters. Do you find rest in that promise when life's storms rage around you? The role of the shepherd is more than just guidance, it's about care, protection, and a deep personal investment in your well-being. The shepherd's presence is one of constant, unshakable security. And just as C.S. Lewis so profoundly put it, God cannot give us happiness and peace apart from himself, because it is not there. The world may offer fleeting pleasures, but true peace, the kind that can anchor you through every trial, can only come from God's presence. Are you leaning into that peace? Like sheep under the shepherd's care, we find not just guidance but peace, purpose, and rest when we trust in God to lead us. It is through this trust that others will eventually see the strength you've held all along. Have you ever felt unseen, overlooked, or unworthy in the eyes of others? God's provision doesn't depend on human recognition. The psalm reminds us that even when others fail to acknowledge our value, God leads us to stillness and safety, much like the quiet waters David speaks of. Lewis also explored this theme of divine provision in his works, suggesting that true fulfillment comes when we stop striving for approval and rest in God's eternal care. The challenge is, are we willing to let go of our desire for worldly validation and trust the paths God is leading us down? Our worth is secure in his guidance, even when the world fails to see it. In our moments of doubt, are we leaning into this divine truth, or are we still searching for peace in the noisy chaos of life? In moments of doubt, do you ever find yourself questioning whether the path you're walking is truly the one God has laid before you? Often, when we are pursuing the dreams planted deep within our hearts, we face ridicule and skepticism. Those around us may question our choices, misunderstand our vision, or dismiss our potential. But should their doubts shake the faith you hold in the one who created you? C.S. Lewis once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." Could it be that these very trials, the misunderstandings and the doubt, are part of God's refining process, shaping you for something far greater? In moments of rejection, when others look down on your progress, it's tempting to internalize their judgment. Yet, if we pause and reflect, we realize that our future is not bound by human opinions. Our journey is securely held in God's hands. He alone sees the hard work, the tears, and the silent prayers that no one else witnesses. As Lewis reminds us, we are what we believe we are. So, what if we choose to believe that God is shaping us for something beyond what we can see? Are we willing to trust him to lead us, even when the road is unclear? When you remain steadfast, even in the face of doubt, know that God is working behind the scenes. He is aligning circumstances in ways you cannot yet imagine. In His perfect timing, He will not only vindicate your efforts, but will transform the way others perceive you. The scorn you face now could one day turn into respect as God's purpose unfolds. Keep pressing forward, for as Lewis stated, the future is something which everyone reaches at the rate of 60 minutes an hour, whatever he does, whoever he is. Trust that with every step of faith, you are walking toward the future God has designed just for you.